What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Last week I made a video on Jayber discussing the problems that I see with Jayber's toolkit at the moment and proposing some potential fixes that could make him a more fun Descendant to play, but also essentially a more efficient and effective Descendant, which are some of the problems I would say that we kind of have with that now. In that video I also did mention that I was going to put out a build video for Jayber, the best way that I see that I can build Jayber right now before any changes that are coming in season 3, and that is this video. I'm not going to go over the same points that I kind of like proposed or discussed in the previous video. Please feel free to check that out. Like I said, it was last week, but essentially in a nutshell, the point is that Jayber's kit itself feels very cumbersome to use. I don't necessarily have a problem with the power level. It could maybe be bumped up a little bit, but I think fundamentally the issue is the fact that his kit just feels really shitty to play with and very slow. The point that you have to take out the blueprint to place it whenever you deploy turrets, and if you're playing a double turret build, you have to do that twice, and then you pull out the gun and then you power up the turrets, and it's just this whole like 8 to 10 second affair to kind of like get this done. And there's a lot of things that along the way can be frustrating, like the fact that minions can body block your turrets and essentially keep you from putting them down, which is really frustrating. And then, like I said, just the simple fact that you kind of like feel like, because of the range limitations and all of that stuff with the turrets as well, that, you know, it's this massive amount of effort that you kind of like have to do every time, sometimes multiple times within one room, because the enemies don't push all the way to your turret wall, that it just becomes really frustrating. In the case of Jayber being a skill-based Descendant, the point is there are literally almost every other skill-based Descendant in the game can do exactly what Jayber does better and faster. So Jayber just feels like any one of those Descendants with like 7 extra steps, which is really annoying. On the power level, as I mentioned, I don't necessarily see that much of an issue with it right now. I feel like if some things would change with the kit, like the turrets hovered around with you or automatically resummoned themselves when you press just one button, or you could immediately put them down, or you can put them down through minions, all of these things could help him feel more playable, and then we could start looking at things like his power level and exactly how much damage he's dealing. Bearing in mind though that the damage that this Descendant deals has actually been changed twice at least already. It might even be fucking 3 times, and that still hasn't solved the problem. So I do believe that a full rework of his kit is needed, rather than just, you know, adding some zeros to the numbers somewhere. Quick note before we actually dive in, I actually made this after I made the entire video. Some of you might be thinking, why the hell would you make this build video when the rework is imminent at the beginning of season 3, and when it's most likely going to affect some of the decisions that we make for this build? And the reason really is twofold. First of all, because I did say that I was going to do a build video, and so here it is. And then secondly, this then creates a good benchmark for me to refer back to after we see the rework in season 3, and we can kind of like compare notes as to what he was like and what he was perceived like before season 3 and what he is like now. I want to be very clear, if you are someone that wants to save as many of their catalysts as possible and does not want to do any wastage or anything like that, I would not advise you to build Jayber right now. Generally speaking, I wouldn't advise you to build Jayber in the first fucking place, but I wouldn't advise you to build Jayber right now simply due to the fact that he is going to change, and even after his change, he still might be the bottom of the fucking pile, which means that your materials are spent elsewhere. However, if you are a fucking whale and you're sitting on stuff and you want to build him out and just get a feel for the Descendant and everything like that, here's the build. So Jayber, of course, has access to a few Transcendent mods, and you're not necessarily pigeonholed into building him the way that I'm going to show in this video. He has, you know, the ability to have 2 medical turrets out for like the ultimate support character. God knows fucking why support is not needed in this game. You can have a immediate purge code build, which essentially makes like massive decently big AoE explosions whenever you use a skill that explodes the turrets and leaves these like damaging zones around, which is also kind of like cute. He's got something that basically helps you with the survivability of your turrets, and instead of you having the gun that empowers the turrets and fucking makes a damage zone around them, the gun can essentially rather increase their duration and you know, heal them up to full with just the press of a button, meaning that you don't have to actually shoot or something. But I chose in this build, I chose to use attacking compulsion because this is kind of like the identity that I want Jayber to be for me. The thing is, attacking compulsion, what it does is it replaces your medical turret with another attack turret, so you have 2 assault turrets basically. They both operate exactly the same way. They both deal pretty much exactly the same damage. They have the same stats, everything. It's just you're getting a second turret. That's it, pretty much it. And then the whole idea of this way of playing is you essentially, you're basically like a turret defense dude. And so you put down your 2 turrets, you take out the gun. The gun allows you to heal the turrets, and also once you hit your turrets with the gun, which is your 3rd skill, then you basically create a damaging zone around the turrets as well. And that's pretty much it. So this is kind of like as simple as that. So I usually do a little section where I go how to play the build. That's it. You go turret 1, turret 2, gun out, bam bam bam, juice them up a little bit and use the remaining bullets on some enemies just because you can, and then you wait for the fucking cooldown, and then you take the gun out again, and then you go. In the footage you can see me actually using Malevolent to do a lot of the additional heavy lifting just to clear faster and so on. And yeah, that is once again just indicative of the fact that if 2 fucking turrets of this Descendant kill slower and less efficient than 1 fucking gun, then yes, we do have a problem, unfortunately. Yes, I know Malevolent is the tits, but yeah, this is just ridiculous for me, and it's super sad that this Descendant is such a fucking joke. All right, so when we're trying to build this, of course, what we're gonna try and do is there's a couple of things that we're gonna approach with this build. We're gonna look at lowering the cooldown. We're gonna look at increasing the damage of the turrets. We're gonna look at increasing the range at which they can kill shit, and pretty much just all in going in on like just making the turrets, kind of like the star of the build. Obviously, that's the point. So we could start off with tackling a little bit of damage and a little bit of cooldown reduction by using the focus mods. Now the focus mods, the 2 that you want is, because remember our damage profile is a non-attribute and dimension. So you want focus on dimension, and you of course want focus on non-attribute, because of course my dude Jayber is a non-attribute Descendant. All right. Now of course the 2 focus, these mods, what they do is they not only give you dimension skill power modifier as well as non-attribute skill power modifier, but they also give you skill cooldown minus 6.1% per mod, which is going to start dropping down our cooldown of our towers, which is, or rather our turrets, which is very important because as you move from room to room, you want those, fucking turrets to be available the entire time. You don't have to wait on them. Next up, we can look at the 2 amp modules, right? So we have dimension amplification and we have non-attribute amplification. Now, both of these 2 mods actually completely crush your critical hit rate as well as your critical hit damage, but that's okay because this is a non-critical hit build, and that's because Jayber has a very low base stat when you start out building him. He starts with 5%, which generally speaking means that he's kind of like not suited for building crit. Yes, I do know that in some cases you can push it up and you can increase the crit with fucking stuff and everything like that, and you can get to a semi-decent crit, but generally speaking, my rule of thumb is if something's at 5%, I tend to like not build it to crit, and I rather just go for raw damage. And in this case, we're going non-attribute amp and dimension amp. Once again, these give us dimensional skill power modifier as well as non-attribute skill power. All right. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to start increasing our range a little bit, right? So skill expansion is a good one for us. By default, the turrets, they have a range of, let me find it, a radius, right, of 6 meters. Now it's not terrible, but it ain't fucking great. So you want to get that up immediately, because the point is, yes, there are a lot of enemies in this game that essentially run you down, so run at you. But there's also enemies which will come to within a certain range of you or a certain range of the turrets, and then essentially start lobbing stuff at them and trying to shoot them or you. And if their range is longer than your turret range, then basically they're getting free shots on your shit and your turrets are not returning fire. So, fuck that noise. All right, so then next, and this is the point, since we aren't building crit, we don't necessarily have a massive amount of additional other options that we can start sort of leaning into. So we can maybe go something like, just to give us a little bit of survivability, because now you also have to remember something. Your turrets have the same amount of survivability as you do. You'll notice here that it says your turrets, the HP, their shield, and their defense is the summoner's 100%. So if you build yourself super glass cannon, which is very much in right now in skill-based builds, because you push out so much raw damage with skill-based builds that you don't necessarily have to be very fucking tanky, because shit dies before it can be a threat to you. In the case of Jayber, this is not necessarily the case, because the point is you want your turrets to be the ones that deal a lot of damage. But if your turrets are glassy as fuck, you're going to be spending so much time trying to keep them alive while the enemy are pelting them with bullets and hitting them and all the shit, that's also going to be counterintuitive. So in this case, we can use something like Battle of Stamina. Battle of Stamina gives us max HP plus 122%, but also gives us a small amount of skill duration. Skill duration for us is also important because that means how long is the turret hanging around for after you summon it. Generally speaking, you want your cooldown to be less than your duration, so at least you have the turret available for the full time before you again have to resummon it. So in this case, we are not, well, sorry, we have just arrived at that point. Our cooldown is 15 seconds on our turret, and our duration is 17.9. So that's good. We're in a good space right now. However, we can make sure that our turrets are available a little bit faster as well by putting in something like Nimble Fingers. Nimble Fingers is going to drop us all the way down to just below 10 seconds, and that's a very comfortable place to be. Generally speaking, with the combination of the turrets and something like Malevolent, you can do full room clears in like 10 to 15 to 20 seconds, which means that your turrets are ready for the next room basically when you go. That leaves us with 3 more slots available. We can load in a little bit more survivability as well as damage with something like Spear and Shield. Spear and Shield is going to give us some defense, which also your turrets inherit, so that's good, and some skill power at plus 8.1%. We have 2 more mods left in at this point, so we can go for something like the non-attribute Syncytium, which is this one over here. This gives us some critical hit resistance, which doesn't matter, but also some non-attribute skill power at plus 10.2%. And then last but not least, we can go for a gold mod, something like Dangerous Ambush. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, well, actually, no, I think this is pretty self-explanatory why you would pick Dangerous Ambush. See, the thing is, with Dangerous Ambush, what it says is when landing a skill attack while the enemy is not targeting you, skill power plus 24.9%. On skill attack against a mobilized enemy, skill power plus 49%. Now, the second point here is only really applicable in situations where you are potentially freezing enemies or where you're fighting like Colossi and the Colossi are fucking stumbled over. So we're more about the first point here, and that is good for us for 2 reasons. One, once your turrets start shooting the enemies are going to target the turrets, which means that you get this benefit because now you are not the target of the enemies anymore. So that's good. And because you get this benefit, your turrets get the benefit, you guys get the point. The other thing also is that the turrets do kill fast, especially like fucking trash enemies and so on. And you can essentially kill enemies by basically spawn camping them. So as soon as they come in, if your turrets are within range, they'll whack them with 1 fucking hit. And so that means, once again, you are still benefiting from this additional skill power, and therefore you're dealing more damage, so good to go. So that is the mod selection that we have right now for this particular setup, and also basically what you saw me use in all of the footage that has been playing so far. Now, in terms of your weapons, the sky's the limit, really. I, generally speaking, in mobbing-based content, run around with Malevolent unless I'm actually leveling another weapon. So I think Malevolent is just really good for us here by default. It, in combination with the turrets, will mean for very fast room clears and big pack clears, like super fast. And so I can highly recommend that. I can quickly just flash my build here for you. This is my sort of like general purpose build that I run whenever I do stuff like, Sigma or 400% infiltrations. I actually pretty sure I use this build in Purge as well. But yeah, this just generally gets the job done. And of course, it's flavored to chill because that's generally also good for Purge. But yeah, this is it. I have another video coming out later in this week, hopefully, with kind of like my choice of the meta weapons, which I think are important to develop for season 3, which Malevolent is one of them. So just, sneak peek. So there'll be a little bit more detail in that video where I can discuss the mod choice decisions and that sort of thing. But this is kind of like the build that I've settled on. You can see I've tried many different kinds to build it and so on. And yeah, there's definitely more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to Malevolent. But yeah, this is kind of like the sort of like default that I've settled on. But Again, the weapon choice here really doesn't matter all that much, because the thing is, your turrets are going to be doing a lot of the damage, so do tend to pick a weapon that you can kind of like assist the turrets with, right? So that's why Malevolent is really good. But you know, anything else like Thunder Cage, anything like that also deals additional AoE damage, can also just benefit you greatly. Yeah, obviously making sure that whichever weapon you pick complements your reactor and is actually the one that's imprinted on your reactor, so that you can get that additional 60% damage. And speaking of reactor though, we can then just quickly move over here, and we can see that materialized phase reactor is the reactor of choice for us, and that's because its two subs is non-attribute and dimension, and that's of course our damage profile, non-attribute and dimension. Then in terms of substats, yes, you can go for more raw damage. Again, like I said, the damage isn't really the problem. You are killing all rank and file enemies with 1 shot and tougher enemies with 2 to 3 shots. So damage is not really that big a deal. I rather focus on substats which can benefit me in other areas where the build is not maxed out, for example, like skill cooldown and duration up. These two are good stats for us. Range can also be a choice here, but these ones are good because, again, I don't want my turrets ever to be on cooldown when I want to use them, and I also want them to last as long as possible so that I don't have to refresh them, because it's fucking annoying having to refresh them. So that's pretty much it. Then when it comes to external components, there's 2 suggestions that I can make here. Mostly, because I run this build in mobbing based content, I run Slayer. Yes, of course, he is a non-attribute descendant, so Enlightened Mage is a really good external component set to run as well. The only issue with Enlightened Mage is that to be able to get Truth to proc, essentially what you have to do is you have to drop your first turret, that's 1 stack, drop your second turret, that's the 2nd stack, and then take out your gun, and then that's your 3rd stack, and then it activates Truth, and you get the additional non-attribute skill power. That means that in situations where you go into a room and there's only like 50 mobs to kill or something like that, and you decide, fuck it, I'm just gonna throw out 1 turret, you're never gonna get to that 84% damage, because you have to complete the entire 1 turret place, 2 turret place, fucking gun out, bang, 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 you've got your shit. So in that case, if I'm running mobbing content, I go with Slayer, because I'd rather just take the full 26.1% flat fucking skill power increase. And then even in situations where I'm only throwing down 1 turret to quickly help me out to kill a couple of enemies, or even 2 turrets, but I'm not taking out the gun, I'm still good to go, and I still have the 26.1% skill power increase from Slayer, which is just a base increase. However, in the case of you perhaps thinking that you rather want to use this for, God forbid you want to use this to kill Void Intercept bosses, then it makes more sense to me to use Enlightened Mage, because most likely you're going to have 1 rotation and then hopefully the fucking Void Intercept boss is dead. So you're going to go turret 1, turret 2, gun out, it activates your 84% additional damage, and then you have a damage window that you essentially kill the Void Intercept boss in, and so that even if you then have to refresh again, you get a full new refresh, turret 1, turret 2, and your gun. So that's pretty much the rationale behind it. I just found like Slayer was giving me, more consistent, effect of damage. But of course, you can also, if you're gonna deploy turret 1, turret 2, and your gun in every single fucking room that you walk into, then obviously just slap on Enlightened Mage. There's no reason not to use that, because you will get that full benefit every time, and it's around for long enough that you can essentially waste out the entire room and go. Then second last but not least is the Arche Tuning board. So in the case of the Arche Tuning board, I would say this is almost like a sort of cookie cutter skill power based build for skill power descendants. You're trying to grab as much skill power as possible. You grab yourself some skill cost reduction, you get yourself some range, you get yourself some more skill power over here on this gold node, or yellow if you're that person. You go all the way up. We avoid the duration node here, we avoid the crit hit and the crit hit damage nodes, because we go up and we grab ourselves the cooldown node. If you rather want more duration and you don't want the cooldown, then you can go in the opposite direction. Sorry for that cell phone tone. And you can rather, instead of taking the cooldown, you can go for the duration. That's perfectly fine as well. But you do end up going all the way up here, and you're using the Mutant Cell non-attribute cohesion, because that is going to be the one that's going to give you your best damage profile for this particular setup. Then, last but not least, our inversion reinforcements. So in the case of the inversion reinforcements, Of course, you do want Arc Circulation Tactic because this gives us a skill cooldown boost as well. If you are struggling with survivability or something like that, then you could potentially look at, because cooldown is not killing us that much with this build, but this is just extra fucking cream on top. But if you are struggling with survivability, you can potentially look at getting yourself some of these other survivability mods, which will rather help you a little bit more. If you're struggling with MP, you can go that way. But my setup is Arc Circulation Tactic. I take Biodensity Augmentation as my survivability thing, because what this does is it gives us max HP, plus we also get the defense crisis response system here. Then I take Adrenaline Rush so that I can get Quantum Domain, which gives me skill effect range and skill power, which is more range and more power for our turrets, which is just also really, really good. And that's it. That's it for the build. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below what other stuff you are still looking for before Season 3 drops. I pretty much hopefully have a video every day of this week, as well as next week up until the launch of Season 3, which is now never been as close as it is yet. Super excited for it. At least we're getting some new stuff to do, and at the very least, at the beginning of Season 3, there'll be some new things for us to look at. I'm super excited for all the reworks and basically the new things that we can see, some, you know, how the builds will change, stuff like that, and also just hopefully getting some more people back into the game and so on, and people enjoying, you know, playing the game, because while my playtime definitely has, I think, taken a dip, I'm still enjoying it a lot, and I'm still enjoying actually bringing up some of the Descendants that I haven't touched basically since the beginning of Season 2, which has now been something like 12 months long or something like that. But again, thank you very much for watching. As always, keep watching. I'll see you in the next video. Fucking cheers.